So we're with Dave today, who's had a career as an electrician since he was 16. So we're just going to go through about your role and your job and your experience you've had. And then I've got a couple of questions for you that you might be asked if somebody could have done physical work experience with you. So if you just want to start with a little bit about you, Dave, a little bit of an introduction on what you've done, how long you've done it for, and your roles.
Yeah, of course. Hello, everyone. I started off, actually, I did, it was more of an electronics-based apprenticeship. I did electrical and electronic engineering at Abro in Donington. Did an apprenticeship there for 3 years. Then because I didn't want to be an apprentice, if you know what I mean, you're still an apprentice when you leave your apprenticeship in the eyes of everyone there. So I had to move on to become a brand new skilled person in a new job, if that makes sense. So I went through a few different jobs, then joined the army. In the army, I did a different kind of apprenticeship. It was more electrical. And then I just went on from there, really. I unfortunately got medically discharged from the army. But when I came out, I had no trouble getting any work whatsoever because I was electrical and electronic based. But nowadays, there's not so much electronic work about. It's more about changing whole things rather than fault finding, things like that. So the more skilled work now is in the electrical industry, so fault finding and installation as well. So that's what we offer at the college anyway. So I've done all sorts. I've worked on domestic, commercial, industrial. I've done fault finding, installations, you name it, really. I've got a bit of all sorts of experience, so I'm quite useful to ask because I've done something in it myself, or even if I haven't done it specifically, I know people that have, and I can always find answers for you. So it's good.
Okay. So what skills and qualities do you think employees look for?
It's more about what you know than what you do, if that kind of makes sense. But so you've got to be someone that's willing to update your skills and keep on top of your knowledge, especially with the wiring regulations. But somebody with a can-do attitude and a logical approach, really. If you've got a kind of a decent method of thinking about you, you can be taught the trade and you can learn the skills, but you can't be taught the attitude, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So if you've got a good attitude and you're keen and you want to learn, then you can be taught. But if you come thinking that you already know everything, you'll never learn anymore from that point. So you just need to be, if you can show that you're keen, people will definitely employ you.
Do you think there's anything else as well that like as a person you might have that relate to it? So if you're like really attention to detail or like quite methodical, anything like that?
That is important, but in engineering, there's definitely more than one way to skin a cat. So if you did a job and I did a job, and then someone looked at the two jobs, they'd probably be totally different how we did it, but the end result would be the same, if that makes sense. So
yeah.
If a customer asked for, I want 2 sockets on that wall, you decide where they want them with the customer and what sort they want, what height. That's all the cosmetic part of it, but deciding on what cables to use and how we're going to get the cables there and what floorboards we'll lift up. Your ideas will be different to mine. Yours won't be better than mine, and mine won't be better than yours. But as long as it's safe and all the test results are within the tolerances at the end, it doesn't really matter. But it just looks like in the end that 2 sockets have grown on the wall like they've always been there. That gets the customer happy. So it's good.
Okay, so what would like a day on site be like for you if you could think of one of your roles where you were working, pick like a job and just describe it as average day?
My most recent job, I was working for the Wrekin Housing Trust, so it was mostly fault finding work. So a customer would ring up with whatever the problem is, and I'd turn up and sort the problem out. So a lot of the time, it's in houses where someone will ring up and say, for some reason, my lights aren't working. So I'd go in, and it could be anything from they've bought cheapo bulbs from down the shop for 10 for a quid, and they put it in and it's blown and they're blaming the electrical circuit, or it could be that they've done a bit of DIY or hung a picture frame and they've knocked the nail straight through the cable. So sometimes you can find the fault without even getting your test equipment out. You can just ask people, so have you been doing anything? But they don't want to feel like they're getting into trouble, so they won't tell you straight away. But then when they realise there's no trouble and you're just trying to help them, and as soon as you can find it, you get their electricity back on and they're away. They start drip feeding you things like, oh well, someone did put a picture up for me then actually, or so you kind of do it that way. Or if not, there is a specific way that you learn at the college from a sequence of testing that you'll go through, and you will be able to find the faults and interpret the results.
Okay. So would you have like a centralised area that would give you like a list of jobs to do when you work there? So you'd go in and
Well,
fix one job, come back, tick that off, and then be given another. How would your day like? How do they
in
kind of
general,
organise you?
companies work through PDAs or through their mobile phones, and jobs get sent through. And as soon as you finish the job, you'll click finished, and another one will come straight through to you. So it just depends on what jobs come through, or whether you're working on installations or maintenance or fault finding. But generally, as soon as one job is about to finish, you'd click about to finish, you'd finish off and give it time for the next job to come through. So there's never any break in work. You generally work from your own van. So you drive from job to job. And as you go, you plan out pit stops at the wholesales to replenish equipment and stock and things like that. So you're kind of your own boss. As soon as you're qualified, you're your own boss, who you receive jobs coming through to you from a central office.
Mm. Okay, that's really helpful. So what was the hardest part of your job, or some hard parts you found in some
Um,
of your roles?
Once you're qualified and you're knowledgeable, there isn't anything that's really hard as such, but it's awkward to try and plan what you need on your van at one time,
Mm.
because you can't ever have like 100 of every single thing, because there's not the space, and it's dead money, wasted money sitting there on a shelf. So you have to kind of, in your own mind, figure out what you use a lot of. So you need, say, if you know that in a week you're definitely going to use 10 switches, for example, you need to make sure you've got at least 10 on the van. So
Mm.
you need to plan a time when you're going to get to the wholesale and pick those up and whatever you need, so that you don't have to waste time going to the wholesale more than once. If you can get more than enough, but not so much that you're wasting money, if you know what I mean. It's kind
Yeah.
of a catch-22. You don't want to waste money, but you don't want to waste time going and getting more stuff when you don't need to.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So it's
Okay.
planning in a nutshell.
Yeah, yeah. And you don't know whatever you're ever doing, do you really? I suppose
You
just
never know. You
thinking
can
that
never
gauge.
predict what jobs are going to come in, so you've got to just make your best guess.
Yeah. Okay. So if any students are watching who are interested about potentially becoming an electrician, what would you recommend to do to find information or to enroll for a course, or what would you advise them to do?
Best thing to do is to call TCAT and ask to speak to somebody involved, one of the lecturers or one of the salespeople, and they can put them in touch with a lecturer or myself, and I'll have a chat with them. I'll tell them everything that's good and bad. I won't dress it up and make it as brilliant, but I know it sounds biased, but I really love the job, and it is a great job, and it kits you out so that you can do other things as well. It's not just once you're an electrician, that's you pigeonholed and you can only do that. The
Mm.
skills and the abilities that you gain and you learn help you out with other trades and other aspects of life, especially all construction work. So, for example, in my adult life, I've never had to get the phone book out or go on Google and find a tradesman to come and do a job for me, because starting off as an electrician, I've developed other skills as I go, and I can fix anything in a house now. So I've actually became a property developer just by having extra skills gained over the time. For example, when I started off, I would start wiring showers in for people, and then people would say, "You can't do the plumbing as well, can you?" I was like, "Oh, I can't." So I taught myself, and I did a course how to do the plumbing just for a shower. Then people say, "Well, what about the plastering? Can you plaster the chases?" So I learned how to plaster.
Mm.
Then they'd say, "Well, can you tile?" And once you can do the electrics, the plumbing, and the tiling, it's only a little leap until you can put a bath in or a shower in or a whole replace a bathroom suite. And if you can do a bathroom, you can do a kitchen and so on. So before you know it, you can do anything. And then you've got the skills already. So if you do a little course on plumbing, you already know how to use the tools. It's just about working out about water rather than electricity. It just leads on to different things. It's really good.
Okay. And what kind of advice would you give to somebody who's looking to go into this career? Do you need to have things like your maths and English? What kind of skills and experience would you
Yeah.
say get now?
English and maths are always the two main important ones in any subject, really. Science is also useful, but the maths is the one. There isn't anything that's going to really tax anyone of a decent level of maths and English, but they are the most important ones.
And do you
It's
use that now, like your maths? Do you use that
I was
in?
just about to say the maths, some of the maths and the English is obviously great for communication anyway, you'll always need that. But the maths, a lot of it you will use it to pass the exam. Then after the exam, you won't ever look at those formulas ever again in your life. It's all done by apps nowadays. So it is useful, but
Just get your head down and get it done
there's a lot
now.
of technology in place now, so you don't need to do formulas to work out cable calculations anymore. You can do it with an app, but
Okay.
you need to know how to do it for the exam. But we'll
Yeah.
teach you that. We'll teach you that and get you through.
Okay. So when you were working, did you have to think about health and safety in the workplace? And could you give me some examples of that might be? Or if you had somebody with
Yeah.
you doing work experience now, what would you kind of talk them through in the
Yeah,
workplace?
health and safety is very hot at the moment, and it always was in all the companies that I worked for as well. So your basic uniform always incorporates safety boots. So, for example, if ever you dropped anything, you hit yourself on the toes, you're going to be safe. But the boots are actually part of your uniform, and every different aspect of the job always comes with extra health and safety. There's always a risk assessment done, there's always a method statement done. So when you're taught the job the first way, you'll be taught the safe way to do it anyway. So you can't really make a mistake. You just do things the way that you were taught to do it, and it will be the safe way anyway. So we'll go through that with you at college. You'll also be taught it on site by your mentors. But my job as an assessor, I'll be coming out and seeing you, and I'll be, if I see anything that's wrong, I'll be showing you a safer way to do things anyway. So you don't need to worry too much. You will be taught as you go, but it'll be done second nature to you. Like, for example, in my drill box where I've got my drill, I've always got a pair of goggles in there. So when I get my drill out, my goggles are there straight on, so I can't really go wrong.
Just used to it now, probably, aren't you?
Yeah,
And do you have
well,
to adhere to any Sorry, and do you have to adhere to any GDPR or anything like that? Do you have any other issues like
yeah,
that, or first
yeah,
aid in any extra training you do,
yeah.
or?
GDPR is a lot of the communications that I do with my students. I do it with through emails. So I do a group email, and I do it on the BCCs, so a blind carbon copy. So if I tell everyone in the course the same thing, nobody can see what anyone replies to me and things like that. And it's quite useful if someone asks me a question. I always think if that's a good question, other people will probably want to know the answer.
Yeah.
So I just redact it. So I take out the personal information so no one can figure out who's asked the question, and I'll send it back to the whole group again in a BCC again, so that see the question, then I'll give my answer. That's how I communicate with a lot of the courses really that I teach.
Okay. And can you think of an example from your actual work, like one of the toughest jobs you've had, like a call out or something you might have had that was really tricky, or working in a team? Was there anything you can kind of think of that was tough for you to do?
Not specifically, because the engineering industry works like a well-oiled machine, doesn't it? But all the jobs are all straightforward. They go roughly to a plan. But where things go wrong is where people are sick and don't come in, or jobs overrun and so on. So they run into your job and so on. So, for example, if we're going to put a kitchen in somewhere, there's a process where you have to follow. So there's always the first thing that has to do is the kitchen fitters go and rip the kitchen out, obviously. But before they can do that, the plumber has to go in and turn off the water, and the electrician
Yeah.
has to go in and make safe the electrics. Then they can rip out the kitchen. Then the plumbers and the electricians will go back, like the day after, and put the electrics dead in place, and the plumbers will put the pipes in place, but have them isolated as well. Then the kitchen fitter's got to go back and fit the kitchen around everything. Then the tiler's got to go and tile everything nicely, plasterers, painters, decorators, whatever. Then you have a second fix where you turn up and put the fronts on the electrical, like the switches, sockets, etc. The plumbers will come and collect the taps and things like that, and then you'll turn everything on and make it live and toward at the end of the job and test it and sign it off. But if I turn up on the day when my boss has said, right, you've got to go on day 3 and do your first fix. If I turn up but the kitchen hasn't been ripped out yet, I've wasted my time. So I've
Yeah,
quickly
can't do anything.
adjust and I've got to think on my feet. What can I do to make myself useful so that I'm not just sitting in the van? Is there something else I can do, or is there another job that I can go on to now that I'm not going to hold them up? So it's planning. It's always the planning that's awkward. The job itself, once you've got the
Yeah.
skills and the training, there's no problem. You should be able to do it fine.
Okay. And is there anything you've ever thought, like a project you've done or a house or something you were like proud of, or like really, or you really enjoyed doing something that was like quite hard and different? I don't know if there's like
Yeah,
modern
well,
houses you build
well,
now, or
I am actually a property developer, so in my house I can show you what I've done. I can swing my camera around. Can you see?
yeah.
Nice big fireplace that I've put in there. I did all that myself. Behind me, all the kitchen and the Arga feeds and all the sockets. You can actually see, I'll show you that it's a work in progress. You can see there's a socket. It's not even finished yet. But where I've done things myself, when I was telling you about the first fixes, and you know, when you've I don't know if I'm aiming properly, but there's a few spur that's been put in to do the ignition for the boiler. All the electrics that are in for the kitchen. The ideal is when it's finished, it just looks like the socket just grew there, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
In
Do
real
you
life,
prefer
a lot
working
of
on like a
time
new
into it.
build? What do you prefer? Would you prefer like going into a brand new thing, or would you prefer like having a challenge and going into like an older place that needed renovating? Or
Well, to be honest, if you can get a job where there's a bit of everything, it's always better because you can get bored of doing the same thing, can't you?
mm,
A new build is good because it's nice and clean and you're just clipping your cables on and capping them, putting the boxes on, then you go. When you
mm,
come back, all the plastering and the messy bits been done already, and you're just making off the cables and putting the accessories on the ends. So it's good, but it can get repetitive, and it's very much a lot of companies do piecework where they pay you per job. So the quicker you work, the more you earn, if that makes sense. But
mm,
can get very robotic, and then you're racing, making mistakes and things like that. So it's not so good in that way.
mm.
Once you've been doing it for a while, you do get very quick, so you can make a lot of money doing it that way. But it can be not as fun, not as engaging, if you like.
Mm.
When you go around fault finding, it's quite fun because you meet different people every day. You
So
could
what would you do in there? What would that situation be like if you were doing like a fault finding?
well, imagine in my last job, I'll just get a job through and it'll say, Mrs. Smith, the lights aren't working, or it might say the shower's broken. And you'll turn up and you knock the door and you don't know who you're going to meet. So you meet somebody, or it might not even be the person, it might be someone that's babysitting the house because they've had to go to
Mm,
work. So you go and you say, what's the problem then? And they say, I don't know, something to do with the shower. So you've got to go and figure out how some of the shower works, try and figure out where the cables might be. Sometimes you don't even know where the fuse board is. You've got to root under the stairs and look in cupboards and all sorts.
mm.
Well, it's just good fun, and it's nice to meet new people and try. It's like being a detective and figuring out what's gone on and what's gone wrong. So it's good.
Okay. Brilliant. Well, that's really helpful. Thanks ever so much for your time today, and hopefully it's useful to a couple of students who are potentially going to miss out on work experience but just want a bit of an idea into the industry. Is there anything
Yeah.
you think I've missed that might be useful, or you get asked, or questions,
Well,
or
the main reason to go into it at the moment is obviously the money's good. It's actually it's a good, fun, varied role, and also there's a saying that goes around: you'll always have work.
mm,
Everybody always needs an electrician, don't they? So
yeah,
you're never going to be stuck for work. Like during the lockdown, there's a lot of people that have been out of work and struggling.
yeah,
The electricians haven't. They've had work. There's been fault finding work to do. There's been installation work to do still. you're never going to struggle for a few quid if you're an electrician, put it that way.
Okay, brilliant. Nice to know always, isn't it? Good.
Yeah, and
Good.
also there's progression as well. You can progress from an electrician up the chain within a company. You can run your own company. The course that we offer at Telford College, once you finish that course, you can register with a scheme and you can become your own boss instantly that day if you like. You work for yourself.
Okay, brilliant. All right.
Right.
Well, thanks ever so much, Dave. That's really helpful.
Lovely. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Bye.
Bye.